Halley Bay, a group of huts on the east coast of the Weddell Sea. The village lies 2 miles inland from the edge of the floating ice shelf, 900 miles from the South Pole. Men live here for 2 years at a time, operating and maintaining long-term scientific programs.
A little bit of the history and the why and wherefore of Halley Bay. It operated during the IGY, was a very successful station, entirely devoted to geophysical work. Upper atmosphere, ionospherics, geomagnetism, indeed seismology at that time. The base, as you will have gathered, is built on floating ice shelf, and it has the unfortunate result that it is constantly going deeper into the ice because of the cover which takes place, and the passage which the base is taking is gradually down through the ice. When we came to rebuild the original station, it was already 60 feet under the surface, and is presumably quite a bit more now. The last time we built it, it was built stronger, but that is, as you will see, also breaking up under the not only pressure, but the internal movements and deformation, which results in internal pressures in the ice. And this time we are trying another tack of building a steel tube with the structures inside it.
You looking good this morning, John?
Aye, that's his maybe, but that bloody curry kept me up all last night.
Yes, it's an ice fall. We're standing out to sea. Control on the bridge. Power on the main engine.
Get away from the stern!
Power on the main engine.
All right, sir. Somebody get a rope. Get them off in a net! Stand like body, sir. Get ways off! Take it up on the port winch.
The average temperature over the year is -20 centigrade, and there are long periods in the winter months when it stays in the low 40s. Wind speed is very important in assessing the total cold. Repeated exposure to this cold, dry air changes the body regulating mechanisms. The blood vessels in the skin constrict and allow the outer layers of the body to cool, in this way saving heat. Skin actually exposed to the air has a higher temperature in acclimatized men. and this reduces the risk of cold injury, making it possible to work for longer periods. But the cold is not the most difficult part of living at Halley Bay. One can adapt, at least partially, to that. Psychological adjustment to the long polar night and the isolation from familiar surroundings is far more difficult. There is no family life or source of emotional satisfaction, but conversely, a communal society of great intensity. The actions of each of the 21 members deeply affects the others. Moods are reflected through the group. It is almost inconceivable that a man could winter in a society of this nature without surrendering part of his individuality.
The current ice report's just come through. Good. Nice to see their picture shows 8 officers of pack coming westward round Cape Norwegia.
The last sea ice and weather report from Sydney. I suppose a bit mank as usual.
Pressure's rising slowly with some mank, but they've got 4 octaves brash with some heavier bergs moving in from across here.
Shore party, shore party. This is Bransfield. Jim, will you get the ship down to the chip? Roger. This will be the final exchange of cargo, baggage and personnel. Shore party Bransfield, over.
The ship had completed relief, a once-yearly visit to the base, and we were staying with 5 people from last year. In some ways, it was rather bewildering, difficult to grasp that if events didn't go well, there was no way out. Although we had a base commander, getting the work done and making a success of the community was everybody's responsibility. I didn't see the ship leave. I couldn't get the motor sledge to start, but I think everyone was glad to see she'd gone, probably because there was no longer any choice. Our only contact with the world outside would be by teleprinter links to the survey in Stanley and London. Through them we could get 200 words a month from our families as an air letter, and 100 to them. And radio telephone contact with the other Antarctic bases. The 5 people from last year seemed a bit thoughtful for a few days, but with the Bransfield gone, we could all settle in and find out what our new neighbours were like.
Why are scientific measurements made at Halley Bay, despite the cost, stress and danger involved? We need to understand the forces which control our environment. These are best studied at places where they are abnormally large or most easily understood. Halley Bay is at a critical latitude in a unique zone for solving ionospheric and magnetospheric problems. Meteorological conditions in the southern hemisphere also offer important possibilities for testing theory. This is now possible by combining ground-based and satellite measurements. The ionosphere at heights between about 50 and 300 miles is monitored every 15 minutes using an ionosonde. This is known on base as the Beastie because its pulses often get into the record players and tape recorders. It is a pulse radar equipment in which the transmitter changes frequency slowly and the receiver keeps in tune. Each frequency is reflected by a known density of electrons so that the measured delay gives the height at which this is found. The magnetosphere, at heights around 40,000 miles, is sounded using natural pulses. These are generated by lightning flashes in the northern hemisphere. In the audio frequency range, the higher frequencies move faster than the lower, so that each pulse is drawn out into a falling note lasting several seconds. The whistler. A radio sound balloon is launched every day. These measure pressure, temperature and relative humidity as the balloon ascends. The position and height of the balloon is found using the radar, thus giving wind velocity also. As the air is very clear, measurements of the light and heat from the sun can show the presence of very small amounts of pollution. Despite the high latitude, this radiation can be twice as intense as that found in England in summer.
Hello, Rod, you ready?
A special camera, which can photograph the whole of the sky, is used on clear nights to record the aurora. The particles which cause this alter the Earth's magnetic field and absorb radio waves.
Hi, Chaz. Hello, Winkle.
James Cook crossed the Antarctic Circle 3 times in 1772, proving that if there was a continent, it lay beyond the pack ice belt and must be desolate. Bruce, the leader of a Scottish expedition, discovered Coates Land in 1901, and the Royal Society built Halley Bay in the same area 55 years later. I wanted to see the Antarctic after reading about Shackleton, Mawson, Scott and the others, and when I left university, this job was a good way to get down here. I'd picked up a lot about Halley Bay at the conference before leaving England, and Chris and I were getting used to the routine that Dave had suggested. He'd been here last year and knew the ways of the base, in spite of being able to get up in the morning, and the only comment you could get out of him before smoker was, "I feel grim." Gash was still new, and new enough to be a novelty. It was coming round soon. We were on Gash one at a time, and it was really doing the housework, cleaning the dining room, shoveling snow from the surface down chutes into the milk tanks to make water, and washing up after meals and doing your own washing. I had a feeling it was going to be a bit boring later on in the year, but it wasn't too bad to begin with. Baths using gallons of water weren't on. We took showers when we wanted them after topping the tanks up with snow.
When I first came here a year ago, having to go outside every 3 hours to do the weather report, regardless of the weather, was a bit of a drag. But now it's just a routine, throwing your windproofs and outside.
The new base, still on the surface, had got a bit of snow on board which had drifted through the tiny holes here and there, blocking the corridor and filling the insulating airspace between the hut and the corrugated shell. It took a week to clear it between the regular scientific observations while the rest of the base work stopped. At the same time, we began to prepare for the 3 months' darkness. Already the temperature was down in the 30s at night, and as the sun rose lower into the sky each day, so we felt the first breath of winter. We raised all the dumps of stores clear of the Bondu, the snow surface, marked their position with long stakes and did a food run, bringing enough inside to last for 6 months. The food is laid on the Bondu, 1 crate deep, to lower its profile to the blizzard and reduce the amount of drift, and the position of every box is charted on a map kept by the cook. So, map in hand, we drove off the base, went 800 paces north, turned right at the next palm tree and dug in the snow, finding all the gastronomic treasures we needed: flour, canned meat, sugar, crab, and so on.
More and more time was spent underground as the winter tightened down. Routines like the night met man, Trev, making early morning tea, gave stability to the group. Being necessary to the group by doing a useful job was probably the greatest single factor in adjusting successfully to the isolation. Regular events, like the daily balloon flight and the weekly base gash, helped to maintain the society. The monotony of the ice shelf, and now the added darkness, produced a sensory deprivation that showed itself in a variety of mild psychosomatic complaints: insomnia, overeating, headaches, irritability, and odd unexplainable pains. Each man became slightly introverted, and this withdrawn condition persisted for months, but was also a valuable defense against the continuous group life. It changed abruptly to a contrasting extroversion from time to time, notably at the Saturday night parties. Libido was diminished, real girls were too far away, and at the same time too private to talk about. Conversation tended to be about events on the base, or light, trivial reminiscences of England. It was the passive personalities, like the Arctic Eskimo, that adapted most successfully to this isolated life. The glossy penthouses and playboys only came out at midwinter and Christmas. Even so, one developed an idea that girls folded in three and had staple marks across their bellies.
Heads!
The organic medicine on base was mostly a matter of reassuring people and occasionally stitching them up. But Dowie developed an abscess that needed draining under a general anaesthetic. Pressure's 120 by 70.
120 by 70, right.
All right, Dowie, just a scratch in your arm. Is that comfortable? Take a few deep breaths now. You go off to sleep.
Pulse is 80.
Steady.
Steady, yes, steady.
All right. This is a 30-second thing in casualty in England, of course, opening up an abscess, but if anything goes wrong, you've got lots of nurses to bail you out. Is that drip ready?
Yes, it's okay.
Anyway, we put a drain in here. Turn off the halothane. Let's get him on his side now. Have you got a dressing ready?
Yes.
Oh, I think that'll do. We'll leave it like that for the moment.
Fall back to gaze on him when he bestrides the lazy pacing clouds and sails upon the bosom of the air.
O Romeo, Romeo, wherefore art thou, Romeo? Deny thy father and refuse thy name. Or if thou wilt not, be but sworn, my love, and I'll no longer be a Capulet.
Shall I hear more, or shall I speak at this?
Well, do not swear, although I joy in thee. I have no joy of this contract tonight. 'Tis too rash, too unadvised.
Oh, the rubbish.
Yeah, it isn't it? Doesn't make any sense.
What we want is some spontaneous reaction going. Culture.
Hey,
no.
give back, give back.
No!
One thing.
Oh.
The weekly base magazine Loot came out with a bumper midwinter edition, 21 hand-drawn covers and an article from each base member.
And it came to pass that the sun departed and there was darkness in the land. And it was exceeding cold at this time, for winter was well upon them. And the people of Halley did rise up, as if with one voice, to denounce the holy rainmaker of the tribe, saying, You make not rain, but blizzards and fierce winds from the east. And when you make not winds, you cause the sky to be cloudless and the very breath of our bodies to freeze. Just what the hell kind of rainmaker are you? And Trevor, who was an amiable man and blessed with great wit, replied thus, Thou fools, knowest thou not the way of the rushing air and the boiling clouds? It is the will of God that it be rugged in the Antarctic. And the people of Halley crept away to their pit rooms and did huddle beneath their blankets.
Midwinter. I felt like the circus was in town. We had telegrams from the Americans, the Russians, the South Africans, the French, the Presidents of the United States, the Secretary of State for Education and Science.
Hey,
this is the day when the sun starts to spiral back towards us. A week's fiesta. Only the essential scientific work gets done. Midwinter meal with corn on the cob, roast turkey, crepe Suzette, quiche Lorraine and 5 other courses, and a week's buffet after that as the base celebrated.
Oh yeah, I remember. Did I ever tell you about the time I went to Mobster? No. Well, I'm not going to. No, I can't do things like that. The one you're zooming as well, right?
Lazy pacing clouds and sailed upon the bosom of the air.
Dirty beast.
Oh, Romeo!
Oh,
Romeo! Wherefore art thou, Romeo? Deny thy father and refuse thy name. Or if thou wilt not, shall I hear sworn, my lord? Shall I longer be a Capulet? How long are you going to go on? Or shall I hear more, or shall I speak again?
Are you zooming as well, Brian? Happy Halley Bay, happy Halley Bay, happy Halley Bay. We all live in a happy Halley Bay, happy Halley Bay, happy Halley Bay.
This year's midwinter football match was played by the Artful Dodgers, captained by Winkle, and the Bondi Bashers, led by Trevor. Recent low temperatures of -35 or so, and the state of the pitch made it essential to keep it moving. Referee Dowie flips the coin, and they're off to a confused start, not quite sure which way they're kicking. The Artful Dodgers seem to be on the attack, Chaz and Al working well together, giving some lovely interplay in the opponent's half. The Bashers are making a surprise break, which is easily foiled by the Dodgers goalie Richard, and well picked up on the left wing by Chris, who sends it steaming towards the radar stand. A muddled ending produced a grimly fought 1-1 draw in the Penguin Floodlit League.
Greenwich Mean Time. BBC World Service presents Radio Newsreel. On the 4th day of the Middle East War, fierce fightings reported from both fronts, the Suez Canal and the Golan Heights. The Egyptians say their forces are continuing to advance along the whole Suez front, but the Israelis say...
The news was irrelevant to the world at Halley Bay. The winter moved relentlessly through June and into July. The problems from the early winter months recurred more persistently. People just wanted to be left alone, while at the same time needing more than ever to be accepted by the group. The routine work was a great effort. Several people had birthdays, 23, 26, 22 years old. We were too bound up in our problems to see a way out, and it was only the previous selection before we left England that prevented more trouble. We sat and waited for the sun and the warmer temperatures, but even when the sun came back it would be too cold to get out for another month. The field trip was the thing, even though some parties weren't scheduled to go out until December. It was a chance to get off base, away from the cramped personalities. A chance to explore the hinge zone 40 miles to the south.
Relayed to London by cable and wireless. Incoming, outgoing signals and thought ports, comreps and tells. News of Aunt Agatha, Freddy, her cat. Stocks of petroleum, diesel and coal. Maximum wind speeds, thoughts and decisions. Children at christenings, picnics and school. Indent requirements, each item discrete. Tobacco and clothing and paper and steel.
Generally overcast with poor visibility. Periods of drifting snow interspersed with calm, clear conditions. Gale at end of period with high winds gusting to 54 knots. Mean temperature minus 36.4 degrees. 5 days with ice fog. No sunshine. The sun will return August 11th. Ionospherics and geophysics. All programs running normally. Rubidium vapor frequency standard repaired and apparently working normally. Low temperatures have tended to keep people indoors.
Dear Mum and Dad, the sun will be back soon, and we're all looking forward to it, although it'll be cold for some time afterwards. When it is not blowing, the ice and sky are quite still, and while often minus 40, it feels just like a chilly spring morning. Time is going very fast, and we're planning our summer jolly, a trip through the hinge zone, about 40 miles south of the base. Not much other news, so we'll finish here.
Here's your earlet again.
I went to stay with Stephen and Carol for the weekend, and we had a very nice time. Your mother phoned. She said your father is still having trouble with his back and he may have to go into hospital. We had a great office party. Lizzie's getting married at last. Christopher starts his new job next week. It's outdoors, so he'll be happy. England is very green at the moment. We're all looking forward to seeing your photographs when the ship comes in.
As the temperature rose into the 30s and 20s, the summer work program started on base. The ozone and auroral huts had to be raised, access shafts extended, a magnetic survey done. And in small parties we left base for our 3-week annual field trip. Dave, Trevor and Brian travelled south. They hoped to follow one of the 2 known routes to the hinge zone, making their way to crossroads on the inland ice. The ice in the hinge zone moves very rapidly and is heavily crevassed. The Bob Pie line winds 10 miles through this area over a series of flagged stakes. There are depots along the Bob Pie line and a big accumulation of stores at Crossroads, which used to be one of the main depots on the tractor route to the Shackletons. They navigated from stake to stake on distance and compass bearing, using hand compasses and getting their distance from bicycle wheels running in the sledge runner tracks.
There was a vast relief being off base, and I could see everything in the world about base in proportion again. This was why I came down here. Leaving base was always new, always uncertain. We had to be completely self-sufficient. If a skidoo broke down or somebody got ill, we had to fix it ourselves.
Well, there shouldn't be any holes from BPO 5 to round about here.
Each sledge carried food, fuel, medical stores, radios and all the other normal camping gear. The hinge zone is the ice bridge between the floating ice shelf on which the base is built and the inland ice lying over the Antarctic rock mass that rises to the central plateau. Up to the approach to Rosette Chasm, the route was fairly obvious, although they had to probe their way through several crevasses not mentioned in earlier reports. Rosette Chasm itself was a problem. The tractor trains used to cross at a place called the Narrows, but this had split and the only way was to descend into the chasm, hopefully emerging from the other side. The route went down a drift tail built out of the cliff promontory by the entry flag and across a series of tilted ice block surfaces. There was cloud to the horizon, no direct sun, and the surface contrast was bad, approaching whiteout as they arrived. And after lowering the sledges down the drift tail, they made camp.
Halley Bay, sledge foxtrot, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Of all the fishes in the sea, the mermaid is the one for me. Do you copy that now, John? Over.
Halley Bay. Roger, Brian. What's your position, break?
Halley Bay, foxtrot. Roger, John, roger. Our position is Rosette Chasm, and we are all okay. Over.
Foxtrot, Halley Bay. Okay, Brian, I read you're okay in Rosette. We've got a bit of trouble here. One of the kegs has gone down a hole near the coast. Nobody's hurt seriously. Ken and Dick were in it, but they're all right. They're all right. But we got to go down and get it out, so I'm going to finish now. I'll call you 2015 Zulu on Channel 13, Channel 13 tomorrow night. Foxtrot, Halley Bay, clear.
The exit slope was deep, soft snow, and they hauled the sledges up by passing a rope through a pulley on a dead man and driving the skidoos downhill. As the skidoos went down, so the sledge went up. From here there were no more flags, but the way to Crossroads was obvious. A relatively undisturbed valley running up between two crevassed projecting spurs. Christmas was a much smaller affair than midwinter. We were all busy moving from the old base across to the new one, and at the same time writing reports and filling out indents for the next 2 years' requirements. Nevertheless, we had an office party in geophysics and Clive cooked a Christmas meal. The weather people marked the occasion in their own way as part of the routine Christmas morning balloon flight. They moved the weather observations across to the new base to start with the new year, and we stripped all we could out of the old base and turned the old generators off.
I'm off to change the chart then.
New year, new base. It's been a bit too busy this year to do some of the things I wanted. But now we're on the new base, I think I'll have more time. I want to get a better set of photographs of the penguins next year, and there are all sorts of things that need doing around the base.
Halley Bay, Halley Bay, Halley Bay, Halley Bay, Halley Bay, Halley Bay. This is Bransfield calling Halley Bay.
When the ship came in, I found the new people irritating. They interrupted the base routines, behaved differently to the familiar characters I knew, brought their own jokes and habits. In the first few days, it was a bit of an effort to be sociable. There were only the stores and fuel to unload this time, and the ship wasn't staying long, so we worked through the 24 hours of daylight, hauling the loaded sledges off the thin sea ice and inland to the base dumps.
I found the most important part of the mail was knowing who had written, and the fresh fruit from the ship was terrific. Once again, the ship prepared to sail. Relief was complete, but as we loaded our personal baggage, I found a curious nostalgia for Halley Bay. For the crisp, clean mornings with the inland ice visible shimmering 40 miles to the south. The ice infinite blue in its flawed surface, reflecting orange and purple haze from sun and sky. The ice and the sky. Tangible wind lifting, altering the fluid snow, laying new patterns on the barren ice shelf. Weddell Sea lapping against the pack ice, unheard sound for half a year. I didn't want to leave the good friends and disremembered parties. The clear-cut issues in our simple, strong life upset by the ship's arrival. But I wanted to get home, too. Back to diffuse, complex relationships, perhaps seen with a new, embarrassing clarity. And England with a society frequently silly and trivial, instant news, win a prize, buy this and that, and save money. I thought we were all different. The time on base had changed us, made us more self-disciplined, maybe even more mature. Mind you, it hadn't helped Dave much. He still felt grim about getting up in the morning.